Let's talk a little bit about Aftersun, the new film from Charlotte Wells, one that I think both of us are hoping to really revisit because it's a very interesting and interestingly put together film about adult Sophie, who's reflecting on a holiday trip she took with her father at 11 years old by revisiting memories and mini DV tapes. This one also notably stars Paul Mescal in the role of her father. And they've been sharing some really interesting photos
You saw that?
on A24's
Yeah.
Twitter and stuff, where you can see just how close in resemblance Charlotte Wells when she was 11 is to the young girl in this film. It really, really cool stuff. But just as a film, Art, what was your reaction to Aftersun?
I had seen her short at Chicago a while back, and I was like, okay, this is a very interesting director. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with their feature. And the first time that I saw it, very solid movie. Since revisiting or visiting a lot of the Q&As and just the behind the scenes and her approach to it and this discussion about her specifically being the age that her father was,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those movies where it's trying to hit on that wavelength of like, are you at that point where how would you be with a kid right now? Uh, and your parent had to take care of you during this time. I'm at the point where I'm well past the age of both of my parents when they had me,
Right.
um, and in here because she relates it to her father, and the only times that they were able to see each other was on these vacations. That he was always someone who was confused as being her brother because of how young he was, and
Mm-hmm.
how that kind of established their relationship growing up. But then it's one of those movies that catches you off guard because it's really a memory, and the memory is digital because she's looking back on these tapes, and it almost corresponds to how the movie is shot in its close-ups and in the way that it looks, how you're only seeing one perspective at a time. Like it switches different perspectives, and she had this line about how the lens in which you view the movie is very important, not just from the girl's perspective, the dad's perspective, but also the lens in which the movie is shot, because she'll shoot it in DV and she'll shoot it in I want to say it was 35 millimeter. So that's one of the reasons why I want to revisit it again, just in terms of seeing how
Mm-hmm.
the story is told once you wrap up the movie and you look back at it. I've seen everyone who's really close to their dad overtly love it more than I do. So I'll definitely say that this is one where the better relationship you have with your pops, the more it's going to hit. But just in that sense of looking back at how your parents were moving at the age that you now share with them,
Right.
I think is very profound. And the actress in this, Frankie Corio, stop,
Yeah.
stop.
Excellent, excellent
We'll
performance.
be talking about close some in another podcast for Chicago. But Frankie Corio gave one of the best young performances of the year.
Yeah, no arguments there. She's phenomenal in the film. So is Paul. I want to shout him out
He's
as
good.
well because
He's
he's
really good.
very solid in the film. I think the thing that's really you mentioned the idea of looking back on a parent. It is very much about how your relationship with your parent is very different as a child and as an adult. Where like as a child, they are this figure of like that's supposed to know better, that's supposed to guide you, that's supposed to have control of the situation and whatever. And then when you get older and you start to become closer in age to the age that your parents were when they had you or whatever, you realize like, oh, we're all just figuring things out. And just because they're your mom or your dad doesn't mean that they are always going to be mom like or dad like. And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm really struck by in this movie is just how happy most of the things that happen are. Like this was like a
Makes it
pretty
sadder.
right. It's a pretty like happy vacation they have. They go on trips and have fun and they play pool and they go swimming and then there's just this like really stark melancholic tone running through the whole thing, and just the juxtaposition of it all is very striking and leaves you with this really unsettled feeling. And I think that's part of why it's just hitting people really hard,
Yeah.
and people are really leaving this one in tears. Um, there are there's sort of some space in the movie for interpretation that I think is part of why I want to revisit it and like feel like I get feel like I can really lock down what she's trying to say with some of these moments, because there is this mystery around what is really going on with her father. He keeps doing these things that we don't necessarily see in full detail, and because you are sort of dealing with like an 11-year-old's memory of her father, you're just getting glimpses of the man he is. And I think it's a really fascinating approach to telling this kind of story. I When the credits hit, I immediately was a little bit like, is that it? Like, I've heard so many 5-star reactions and stuff to this thing, and then like half an hour later, I was already like, wow, that was really good, wasn't it? Like, so sitting on it and feeling it and tossing it over in your mind,
Yeah.
I think really benefits Aftersun for sure.
It's not like Decision to Leave, which obviously I got queued up where everyone's just like, you have to see this, you won't believe it. It's one of those where it's more somber and it hits you. So, and
Yeah.
recently, Gotham Awards, I was telling Zach, they were announced this morning and it just came in, that and Tar. Every single category just came in stacked. So, I'm really looking forward to see what it's able to snatch up, be it in script, cinematography, but definitely Frankie, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's hers to lose on the up and comer.
And Aftersun is already playing in theaters, at least in New York City. I don't know how far it's expanded, but I believe it will
Chicago
continue to
streaming.
expand. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's expanding to at least some more cities. It's an A24 movie, so it's not like a completely indie, like hard to find movie. A24 tends to put their films in a decent number of theaters, and then hopefully before the end of the year it'll hit streaming.
The
So
streaming, yeah, their streaming room usually 2 months max. Everything's at the streaming room.
yeah. Connor left us a comment as well that I'm showing in the live stream. I know he really, really responded to Aftersun, as are a lot of people. So it's absolutely one to keep on your radar, especially if you're in New York or Chicago or some big city where it might already be playing. So yeah, shouts to Aftersun.